The Black Númenóreans, shadowy figures in the lore of Middle-earth. They are lesser known, but fascinating characters in Tolkien's world. But who are these Dark Lords of Numenor, and what role did they play in the history of Middle-earth? Let's delve into their origins, rise to power, and eventual decline.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
The Black Númenóreans emerged from the faction known as the King's Men in Numenor. This group grew increasingly resentful of the Ban of the Valar and envious of the immortal Eldar. Their descent into darkness began from the seduction of Sauron, who promised them power and immortality. But what do we actually know about them? What impact, if any, did they have on Middle-earth? Let's find out. To understand the Black Númenóreans, we must first explore the history of Numenor itself. Numenor, the island kingdom blessed by the Valar, was initially a land of great power and wisdom. The Numenoreans were renowned for their longevity, knowledge, and close friendship with the elves. However, over time, Numenor became divided. The division began with Tar and Calimon, who ascended to the throne in 2221 of the Second Age. Under his reign, the Numenoreans split into two factions: the Faithful, who remained loyal to the Valar and the Elves, and the King's Men, who turned away from these alliances. The King's Men, driven by their fear of mortality and desire for power, began questioning the gift of men, their natural lifespan, and sought ways to extend their lives. As the King's Men grew more powerful, their envy of the immortal elves deepened. They despised the Ban of the Valar, which prevented them from sailing west to the Undying Lands. So, instead, they turned their gaze eastward to the lands of Middle-earth. During this time, Sauron saw an opportunity to corrupt and manipulate the discontented Numenoreans. Sauron, who had been taken captive by Ar-Pharazôn and brought to Numenor, quickly rose to a position from prisoner to one of influence. He promised the King's Men power and immortality, further fueling their rebellion against the Valar. This seduction led to the establishment of strongholds and colonies in Middle-earth, where the King's Men, now known as the Black Númenóreans, exerted their dominion over the local populations. The Black Númenóreans built impressive fortresses along the coasts of Middle-earth, particularly in the southern regions such as Umbar. These fortresses became centres of power, wealth, and oppression, as the Black Númenóreans ruled over the local men with an iron fist. Their rule was marked by cruelty and tyranny as they sought to extend their influence and control. Sauron's influence over the King's Men was profound and far-reaching, promising them power, knowledge, and immortality. Through this, he led them deeper into darkness and corruption. During his time on Numenor, Sauron used his cunning and persuasive skills to manipulate these discontented Numenoreans, steering them away from the Valar and towards his own malevolent purposes. As Sauron's influence grew, the King's Men increasingly embraced his teachings, which included the worship of Malkor or Morgoth, the first Dark Lord. This led them to adopt dark rituals and practices, further cementing their departure from the Valar's guidance. Sauron's promises of immortality and power resonated deeply with the King's Men, who feared death and craved dominance over the lands. The King's Men, now fully under Sauron's sway, began to establish a series of strongholds and colonies along the coasts of Middle-earth. As I previously touched upon, these fortresses, the most notable being Umbar, became centres of Sauron's power and influence. From these bases, the Black Númenóreans exerted control over the local populations, exacting heavy tributes and ruling with cruelty and tyranny. Among the Black Númenóreans, a few individuals rose to particular prominence, like Herumor and Fuinur, but we will come on to these in a moment. The Black Númenóreans' power continued to grow as Sauron prepared for his war against the Elves and the exiles of Numenor. Gathering his forces from the south, which included many of these Black Númenóreans, Sauron launched his assault on Middle-earth. Despite their initial successes, the Black Númenóreans' fortunes would eventually wane following the triumph of the last alliance of elves and men. The influence of Sauron on the Black Númenóreans was profound and devastating. It transformed a faction of proud Numenoreans into Dark Lords of tyranny and oppression, leaving a lasting mark on the histories of Middle-earth. Among the Black Númenóreans, a few individuals stand out due to their significant roles and lasting impact. These figures rose to power through their allegiance to Sauron and their mastery of dark sorcery, making them formidable and feared leaders. Like I mentioned, you had Herumor and Fuinur, who were two prominent Black Númenóreans that established themselves as powerful lords among the Haradrim. Their rise to power occurred after the downfall of Numenor, as they took advantage of the power vacuum and chaos that followed. Both wielded considerable influence and terror, using their mastery of dark sorcery to maintain control over their subjects. Herumor, whose name means Black Lord in Kenya, and Fuinur, whose name is derived from Sindarin and means Night Lord, exemplify the dark and malevolent nature of the Black Númenóreans. Their reigns were marked by cruelty and oppression as they sought to expand their influence and serve Sauron's interests. Another notable figure is Queen Beruthiel, the nefarious, solitary and loveless wife of Gondor's king, Taranon Falastur. Beruthiel was a Black Númenórean who despised the sound and smells of the sea and lived in the inland city of Osgiliath. She was known for her use of cats to spy on the people of Gondor, training them to go on evil errands throughout the night to uncover secrets and terrify her enemies. Beruthiel's malevolent nature and her use of dark arts to control and manipulate those around her eventually led to her exile by the king. Her name was erased from the Book of Kings, but her infamy persisted in Gondorian memory for centuries. And then we have one of the most infamous Black Númenóreans, who was the Mouth of Sauron, who served as the lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr. The Mouth of Sauron was a skilled sorcerer and a cunning emissary, known for his cruel and deceitful nature. He had forgotten his own name, having fully embraced his role as Sauron's servant. The Mouth of Sauron played his role during the War of the Ring, acting as Sauron's spokesperson and attempting to negotiate with the forces of the West at the Black Gate. His mastery of dark sorcery and his unwavering loyalty to Sauron made him a key figure in the Dark Lord's plans. Although his fate is not explicitly recorded, it is likely that he perished during the final assault on Mordor, although we know for sure that this did not happen in the books.
It takes more to make a king than a broken elvish blade.
These notable figures illustrate the diversity and complexity of the Black Númenóreans and highlight their significant roles in the histories of Middle-earth. Their actions and legacies left their mark on the world, shaping the course of events and influencing the struggles between good and evil. The power and influence of the Black Númenóreans began to wane following the triumph of the last alliance of elves and men. The defeat of Sauron at the end of the Second Age marked the beginning of their decline. Those strongholds and colonies that they had established faced increasing challenges and resistance. Despite that initial success they had, the Black Númenóreans could not withstand the unified forces of the Last Alliance. Many were defeated in the ensuing battles and their numbers truly dwindled. Those who survived either merged with the local populations or faded into obscurity. Their once great fortresses became shadows of their former glory as the tides of power shifted away from them. However, the legacy of the Black Númenóreans did persist, especially in Umbar where they had been strongest. This coastal stronghold remained a centre of resistance against Gondor for centuries. The descendants of the Black Númenóreans, including the Corsairs of Umbar, continued to oppose Gondor's rule, driven by the same hatred and ambition that had characterised their ancestors. The Corsairs of Umbar became notorious for their raids and maritime conflicts with Gondor. Their relentless attacks kept the southern borders of Gondor in a constant state of alert. These seafaring marauders symbolised the persistent hostility between the Black Númenóreans' heritage and the Kingdom of Gondor. In addition to their martial legacy, the cultural and psychological impact of the Black Númenóreans was significant. Their embrace of dark sorcery and their worship of Malkor influenced the regions they controlled, leaving a lasting imprint on the local cultures and traditions. The fear and tyranny they instilled persisted long after their decline, shaping the histories and myths of Middle-earth. The story of the Black Númenóreans serves as a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of power and the dangers of ambition when unchecked by moral constraints. Their rise and fall really does illustrate the fragile nature of dominance built up on fear and oppression. And so, while the Black Númenóreans' era of dominance was relatively brief in the grand timeline of Middle-earth, their impact was profound and far-reaching. Their legacy lived on through their descendants, their cultural influence, and the ongoing conflicts they incited. The memory of their tyranny and the lessons of their downfall remain etched in the annals of the free people's histories. During the events of The Lord of the Rings, the legacy and influence of the Black Númenóreans was still felt, particularly through their descendants and the regions that they controlled. So here are some of the key points of their involvement during this war. Of course, you have the Corsairs of Umbar. These were the most prominent descendants of the Black Númenóreans by the times of the War of the Ring. These seafaring raiders were a constant threat to Gondor, launching their attacks and disrupting trade along the coasts. They were, of course, as mentioned before, driven by that same hatred and ambition that categorized their ancestors, maintaining that stronghold as that centre of resistance. The Corsairs had planned a significant assault on Gondor's southern coast, and this attack was intended to coincide with Sauron's main offensive against Minas Tirith, aiming to weaken Gondor's defences and create chaos. But this is where Aragorn stepped in, as he, along with the Grey Company and the Dead Men of Dunharrow, intercepted the Corsairs. By using the Paths of the Dead, Aragorn summoned the Dead Men of Dunharrow to fulfill their oath. They captured the Corsair fleet at Pelagia, a crucial port on the River Anduin. This bold move allowed Aragorn to use the Corsair ships to reinforce Minas Tirith just in time for the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, turning the tide in favour of Gondor and Rohan. And of course the other significant figure during this time was the Mouth of Sauron, again as we've already touched upon. He was the one when confronted by Aragorn, Gandalf and their companions at the Black Gate, who presented them with Frodo's mithril coat, elven cloak and sword to deceive and attempt to demoralise them. He attempted to negotiate terms on Sauron's behalf, trying to exploit the apparent capture of the Ringbearer to force the Free Peoples into surrender. However, his efforts were of course thwarted by Gandalf and the resolve of the Free Peoples. So you can see the involvement of the Corsairs of Umbar and the Mouth of Sauron highlight the influence that the Black Númenóreans still had, even if maybe not as largely as it had once been. Their actions and allegiances demonstrate their ongoing enmity with Gondor and their role as instruments of Sauron's will. And so there we have it, from their origins as the discontented King's Men to their rise under Sauron's influence. Their story is both tragic and instructive. Their ongoing enmity with Gondor and their role as Sauron's instruments highlights Middle-earth's ever-present struggle between good and evil. The Black Númenóreans' quest for power led them to a dark fate, serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition. Despite their decline, their legacy persisted, influencing Middle-earth's political and military landscape. Their contrast with the faithful Numenoreans underscores Tolkien's theme of the value of humility and the peril of seeking power for its own sake. And I would also like to take a moment at the end of this video today to give you a quick update on The Guard, the short film that we are creating. Everything is going amazing. We have just shot Block 2 and the rest of it should hopefully be shot soon too. As always, it is all the money from our Patreon that is funding this. In essence, it is a no budget production if you consider the large scale of film, but every pound that you give is a massive help to create an incredible story. I'm putting a couple of shots on screen now and some behind the scenes clips to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. So if you would like to help support it a little bit more to help push us over the line, then please check out our Patreon. Every little bit really helps. And with that, now it is time for my question of the day, which is, what do you think of the Black Númenóreans? Do you find their fall from grace and their role in Middle-earth as fascinating as I do, or do you think they're perhaps better forgotten? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section down below. And now it is time to give a massive thank you to our patrons who continue to support the channel. You are all amazing. And if you have reached the very end of this video with me today and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. It would massively help us out. And why not drop a like on the video as well? And with that, all I can say is, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.